"You can't park that rust bucket there," she screeched, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "This is a private road, and I will have it towed and crushed." That was my first introduction to Brenda, the self-appointed queen of the Pristine Meadows Homeowners Association. The rust bucket she was referring to was my late father's 1978 Ford pickup, a truck that had worked this land for 40 years. And the private road was the gravel access easement that had been part of my family's farm for nearly a century. I was just trying to unload some fence posts by the gate that separated my property from the new, sprawling suburb that had sprung up like a fungal infection on what used to be old man Hemlock's pasture. Little did she know, blocking that gate was like a child putting a thumb over a fire hose. She thought she was cutting me off from the world. In reality, she was threatening the very source of water that filled her swimming pool, watered her manicured lawn, and poured from her designer kitchen faucet. She was about to learn a very hard lesson about hydrology, property law, and the quiet fury of a man who just wanted to be left alone. My name is Sam, and I'm a hydrological engineer. For 25 years, I designed water management systems for cities and corporations. I understood the flow of water, from the vast, unseen aquifers deep within the earth to the complex web of pipes beneath a city street. It was a world of pressure, flow rates, and unyielding physics. A world of logic. After my wife, Clara, passed away 2 years ago, that world of logic lost its appeal. The concrete and steel felt cold, empty. I left my firm, sold our house in the city, and came home. Home was the 300-acre farm my grandfather had bought, a rolling landscape of fields and forest nestled in a small valley. It was the place where I'd grown up, and the place where Clara and I had always dreamed of retiring. Now, it was just me. The quiet was the first thing that hit you. The sound of the wind in the old-growth oaks, the chirping of crickets at dusk, the distant lowing of my small herd of cattle. It was a symphony of peace, a balm for a soul worn raw by grief. I wasn't a farmer in my father's mold, but I could manage. The work was hard, physical, and honest. It left me too tired at the end of the day for the ghosts to get too loud. The farm was my sanctuary. Its heart was a large, spring-fed reservoir tucked away in the back 80 acres, a pristine body of water that was the source of the creek running through my land. My grandfather, a man with more foresight than most, had secured the water rights to the entire aquifer beneath our valley a lifetime ago. It was an ironclad document, filed away in the county courthouse, a testament to his understanding that water was life. The Pristine Meadows development was a new phenomenon. It had devoured the neighboring property 5 years back, while I was still engrossed in my city life. It was a collection of cookie-cutter mansions, each with a perfect green lawn that defied the dry summer months. It was an island of sterile suburbia, and its residents seemed to view my working farm as some sort of quaint, but slightly dirty, backdrop for their idyllic lives. I didn't mind them, not really. I waved when they drove by. I kept my fences mended and my animals contained. I was a quiet neighbor. All I wanted was to be left alone to heal and to honor the memory of the life I'd planned to live here with Clara. Brenda, it seemed, had other plans. She was a woman in her late 50s, with a helmet of lacquered blonde hair and a face that seemed permanently pinched in a state of disapproval. She drove a white luxury SUV the size of a small tank and dressed in crisp, expensive-looking athletic wear, though I doubted she'd ever broken a sweat in her life. She carried an air of absolute authority, as if the world were a poorly managed department store and she was the only customer who knew how things should be run. "I'm the president of the Pristine Meadows Homeowners Association," she announced, planting her hands on her hips. Her voice was sharp, accustomed to being obeyed. I simply looked at her, then at my truck, then at the gate. I pulled a pair of worn leather gloves from my back pocket. "Morning," I said, my tone even. "I'll only be a few minutes. Just dropping off these posts." "This is not a parking area," she snapped, ignoring my greeting. "This access road is HOA property. It is for the exclusive use of our residents for recreational purposes." I paused, a fence post in my hand. I knew for a fact that wasn't true. The easement was recorded on every plat map for the last 70 years. It was a shared access point, established long before Pristine Meadows was even a glimmer in a developer's greedy eye. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice calm. "This is a deeded easement. My property has legal access through this gate. It's been this way since my grandfather's time." She let out a short, derisive laugh. Your grandfather's time. Things have changed. We have rules now. Covenants. You and your agricultural debris are in violation. She gestured vaguely at my truck and the neatly stacked posts. It's an eyesore. It lowers property values. I felt a flicker of annoyance, a tiny spark in the cold hearth of my grief. This was the first time anyone had challenged my right to be here, on my own land. It's a farm, I said simply. Farms have fence posts. And trucks. Not next to my community, she retorted. I'll be sending you a notice. A fine. And if I see this truck here again, it will be gone. Do you understand me? She didn't wait for an answer. She spun on her heel, marched back to her oversized SUV, and sped off, kicking up a cloud of dust that settled on Clara's small memorial garden next to the gate. It was a simple plot of wildflowers, her favorites, that I tended to every morning. Seeing that dust settle on the petals ignited that flicker of annoyance into a slow, burning coal. I finished unloading the posts, my movements deliberate and heavy. I knew her type. Bullies who weaponized rules and regulations to feel powerful. They thrived on intimidation and the assumption that others would simply back down. I had dealt with them my whole career on multi-million-dollar engineering projects. The tactics were the same, just the scale was different. For the next few days, I tried to ignore it. I received the official-looking letter she mentioned, on thick cardstock with the Pristine Meadows logo embossed in gold. It cited a dozen HOA bylaws that didn't apply to me or my property and levied a $200 fine for improper vehicle storage and creation of a visual nuisance. I tossed it in the bin. My property was not part of her little fiefdom. Her rules were as relevant to me as the color of the sky on Mars. But Brenda was not one to be ignored. A week later, I came down the lane to find a brand new, very official-looking sign bolted to the gatepost. Private property, it screamed in bold red letters. No trespassing. Violators will be prosecuted. Property of Pristine Meadows HOA. Beneath it, a smaller sign read, no commercial or agricultural vehicles permitted. I just stared at it. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. This wasn't just a threat anymore, it was a physical attempt to restrict my legal access. It was a declaration of war. That evening, I dug out the old metal box where my father kept all the farm's important documents. The air in his office was thick with the scent of old paper and pipe tobacco. I found the original deed, the survey maps, and the notarized easement agreement from 1952. It was all there, in black and white, clear as day. The 30-foot wide easement was explicitly for ingress and egress for all purposes, agricultural and residential. Her sign was a lie. A legally indefensible, blatant lie. The next morning, I took a wrench and calmly unbolted her signs. I didn't destroy them. I laid them carefully on the ground, just on her side of the property line. I figured that was a clear enough message. Reasonable, even. It was a mistake to assume she was capable of reason. The following day, the sheriff's cruiser pulled up my driveway. 2 deputies got out, looking uncomfortable. The younger one spoke first. "Sir, we received a call about a dispute over property and the destruction of a sign." I leaned against the porch railing, wiping grease from my hands with a rag. "There was no destruction," I said calmly. "I removed signs that were illegally placed on my property's access gate. They're lying right over there," I pointed. The older deputy, a man with a tired face and a thick mustache, walked over and looked at the signs. "Ma'am, over there," he said, hooking a thumb in the direction of Pristine Meadows, "claims this whole lane is HOA property." "She's mistaken," I said. I went inside and brought out the survey map and the easement document. I spread them on the hood of the cruiser. "This is a deeded easement. It's been in place for over 70 years. Her HOA was built around it." The deputy studied the papers for a long moment. He was a countyman, and he understood land. He could see the surveyor's marks, the legal descriptions. He knew what he was looking at was legitimate. "Well," he sighed, handing the papers back. "This seems pretty clear. But she's claiming you threatened her." My blood ran cold. "I have never threatened her. I've spoken to her exactly once." "That's what I figured," he said, tipping his hat. "Look, we have to respond to the call. But this is a civil matter. My advice: get a lawyer to send her a letter. Some people only listen when it's on official letterhead. They left, and I was left standing there, the legal papers feeling flimsy in my hands. She had lied to the police. She had escalated this from a petty squabble to a legal accusation. The slow-burning coal in my gut was getting hotter. The harassment didn't stop. A few days later, a notice was posted on the community bulletin board, which was visible from the road. It had a picture of my truck, taken from a distance. The caption read, "Be vigilant. Unknown individual in this vehicle has been seen acting suspiciously near our children's play area. Report any activity to HOA security." She was painting me as a predator. Then came the social media posts on the official Pristine Meadows community page. The owner of the dilapidated farm next door is refusing to abide by community standards. His property is an eyesore and a safety hazard. We are exploring all legal options to have it condemned. Condemned. My family's home for 3 generations. The place where I was born, where my wife's memory lived in every corner. That was the moment something inside me shifted. The grief that had blanketed my world for 2 years had left me passive, reactive. I had just wanted to be left alone, to float in the quiet currents of my solitude. But Brenda, with her relentless, baseless aggression, had thrown a rock into my calm water. The ripples were turning into waves. The peace I had sought was not going to be given to me. It had to be defended. The turning point, the absolute final straw, came on a Saturday afternoon. I was on the back porch, cleaning my tools, when I heard my dog, Buster, letting out a series of pained yelps from the front of the property. Buster was a gentle old golden retriever, Clara's dog, really. He wouldn't hurt a fly. I ran, my heart hammering in my chest. I found him near the gate, limping, with a small cut on his paw. And lying on the ground was a piece of meat, studded with what looked like broken glass. I saw red. A blind, white-hot rage I hadn't felt in years. I scooped Buster up and checked him over. The cut was minor, and thankfully he hadn't eaten the bait. But the intent, the malicious, cruel intent, was unmistakable. I looked over toward the pristine houses, and I saw her, Brenda, standing on her perfectly manicured lawn, watching me, a smug little smile on her face. She didn't even try to hide it. In that instant, my quest for peace died. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This woman had not just trespassed on my land. She had not just slandered my name. She had not just tried to intimidate me. She had tried to harm my dog. She had crossed a line from which there was no return. She had started a war. But she had no idea what kind of weapons I had at my disposal. My weapons weren't fences or signs. My weapons were knowledge, patience, and the unyielding laws of nature. She wanted to control the land she could see. I was about to show her I controlled the water that ran deep beneath her feet. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my father's old office, the deeded easement and the survey map spread out before me under the glow of a desk lamp. The anger had subsided, replaced by a chilling clarity. My mind, the engineer's mind that had been dormant, began to wake up. I saw the situation not as a personal attack, but as a system with a critical design flaw. Brenda was the flaw. And I was going to systematically dismantle her. I started where any good engineer would, with research. The next morning, I drove to the county records office. I wasn't just looking for my own paperwork anymore. I was digging into Pristine Meadows. I spent hours poring over microfilm and digital archives, pulling every document related to the development, the original land sale, the zoning variances, the building permits, the environmental impact statements, and, most importantly, the utility infrastructure plans. It was tedious work, but it was familiar. It felt good to be using that part of my brain again. I was hunting for a weakness, a vulnerability in her perfect, manicured world. And then I found it. It was a detail that most people would overlook, buried in a thick binder of geological surveys. The developer of Pristine Meadows, in a cost-cutting measure, had opted out of connecting to the municipal water main, which was 5 miles away and would have required a huge investment. Instead, they had drilled a series of high-capacity wells and built their own private water system. My heart began to beat a little faster. I cross-referenced the well locations with my own topographical and hydrological maps of the valley. A slow smile spread across my face. Their wells were drilled directly into the same aquifer that fed my reservoir. The very aquifer for which my grandfather had secured primary water rights almost 70 years ago. They were drinking my water. Their entire community, their lush green lawns, their sparkling pools, their $500,000 homes, existed because of the water flowing from my land. And based on the documents I was reading, they were operating on a secondary, non-guaranteed water right that was contingent on the primary holder, me, not exercising my full claim. The developer had gambled that the old farm would never need or claim its full allotment. Brenda had picked a fight with the men who held the master valve to her entire kingdom. The next piece of the puzzle came from my old friend, Frank. Frank was a retired sheriff's deputy, a man who had seen it all and had a healthy distrust for authority, especially the self-appointed kind. I met him for coffee at a local diner, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who called you honey. I laid out the situation, from the gate to the poisoned meat. Frank listened patiently, stirring his coffee. Classic bully, he said when I was done. Gets a little bit of power and it goes to her head like cheap whiskey. The lying to the cops, the slander, that's textbook. She feels untouchable. I need more than just the easement to shut her down, Frank, I said. I need to hit her where it hurts. I found this stuff about the water rights. Frank whistled softly. Well, I'll be. So she's living on your water and trying to block you from your own land. That's a special kind of stupid. There's more, I said. I've been watching the HOA's finances. They publish a newsletter with a budget summary. Their fees are high, but the money they claim to be spending on water system maintenance seems astronomical. And yet, I haven't seen a single maintenance crew out there. Frank leaned forward, his eyes glinting. Now you're talking. Embezzlement. That's not a civil matter. That's a felony. How do I prove it? I asked. You need someone on the inside, he said. Or you bait her. People like that, they're arrogant. They make mistakes. You just have to be there with a camera when they do. His advice solidified my plan. It would be a two-pronged attack. The first was legal and technical, leveraging the water rights to create an existential threat to her community. The second was personal and direct, aimed at exposing Brenda herself as a fraud and a criminal. I called it Project Drought not because I ever intended to actually cut off their water, I wasn't a monster, but because I was going to hang the possibility over her head like the sword of Damocles. Phase 1 was setting the trap. I went to an electronics store and bought a set of high-definition, weatherproof surveillance cameras. They were small, motion-activated, and had night vision. I spent an afternoon carefully concealing them in the trees and fence posts around the gate. One was aimed at the gate itself, another down the access road, and a third pointed directly at the spot where the poisoned meat had been left. The system recorded to a secure hard drive in my house. Next, I went to my workshop and started building. I was an engineer, after all. I took a new, heavy-duty padlock for the gate and modified it. I drilled a tiny, almost invisible hole in the casing and installed a pressure sensor connected to a microtransmitter. If anyone tried to cut, drill, or smash the lock, it would send a silent alert to my phone. It was a digital tripwire. Then, I drafted a letter. Not an angry one. A calm, professional, and terrifyingly precise one. I had a lawyer friend in the city review it. It was a masterpiece of legal understatement. The letter calmly stated the facts of the deeded easement, citing the exact book and page number in the county records. It included a copy of the survey map. It then politely informed the Pristine Meadows HOA that any further attempts to obstruct my access, post illegal signage, or harass me, my family, or my animals would be met with immediate legal action. But the real poison was in the last paragraph. Furthermore, I wrote, it has come to my attention that the Pristine Meadows water system draws from the aquifer to which my property holds primary and senior water rights, recorded document #734B. Please be advised that I am currently commissioning a full hydrological survey to assess the impact of your community's water usage on my agricultural operations. I reserve the right to exercise my full legal water allotment, as may be required. I didn't threaten to turn off their water. I didn't have to. I just let them know that I could. I sent the letter via certified mail, return receipt requested. I wanted to know the exact moment the serpent received the apple. The certified mail receipt came back 3 days later. Signed by B. Miller. The trap was set. Now, I just had to wait for the animal to walk into it. I didn't have to wait long. The alert on my phone buzzed at 2:13 in the morning, just over 24 hours after she received the letter. The pressure sensor in the padlock had been triggered. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled up the live feed from the cameras on my tablet. The night vision image was crystal clear. Brenda's white SUV was parked on the road. And there she was, dressed in dark clothing, at my gate. In her hand was a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters. I watched, my breath held tight, as she struggled with the hardened steel shackle of the lock. She grunted with effort, putting her whole body into it. The lock held. Frustrated, she threw the bolt cutters to the ground. Then she started screaming. It was a raw, guttural sound of pure rage, echoing in the silent night. There was no one around to hear her, except for my hidden microphones. "You think you can threaten me?" she shrieked at the unfeeling gate. "You old hick. This is my town. My rules. I will ruin you. I will burn your disgusting farm to the ground." She kicked the gate, then picked up a large rock and began hammering at the lock, the sharp clangs ringing out in the darkness. The pressure sensor in the lock was going crazy, logging every single impact. Finally, exhausted, she gave up. She stood there, breathing heavily, and then did something that sealed her fate. She looked directly into the lens of the camera I had hidden in the main gatepost, a camera she could never have known was there. Her face was contorted in a mask of pure hatred. "I'm coming for you, Sam," she hissed, her voice a venomous whisper. "You and your stupid dead wife's flowers." And then she spat on the small memorial garden. I saved the recording. I backed it up to the cloud and to 2 separate hard drives. It was my smoking gun. Attempted destruction of property, trespassing, and a direct, recorded threat. But I wasn't going to use it. Not yet. This was just the first piece of the puzzle. Her public image was still pristine. She was the respected HOA president. I was the crazy old farmer. I needed a more public stage to begin her downfall. The opportunity came a week later. The HOA was holding its quarterly community meeting in the clubhouse. The agenda, which was posted online, was full of the usual mundane topics: lawn maintenance awards, holiday decoration rules, a debate over the acceptable shade of beige for mailboxes. I decided to add an item to the agenda. I put on a clean shirt and a pair of jeans that weren't stained with grease or dirt. I walked into that clubhouse like I owned the place. The room was filled with about 30 residents, all looking various degrees of bored. Brenda was at the front, presiding over the meeting from a small dais, radiating smug authority. Her eyes widened in shock when she saw me walk in. A flicker of panic, then it was gone, replaced by a condescending sneer. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice dripping with false politeness. "This is a private meeting for Pristine Meadows residents only." "Actually," I said, my voice calm and carrying easily in the quiet room, "I'm here to discuss a community matter. Item 4 on your own agenda, easement and property line maintenance." A murmur went through the crowd. Brenda's face tightened. "That item concerns HOA common areas. It has nothing to do with you." "On the contrary," I said, walking to the front of the room. "It has everything to do with me. And with all of you." I hadn't come empty-handed. I was carrying a large foam core board. I set it on an easel near the dais. On it was a huge, professionally printed satellite image of the entire valley. Overlaid on the image were the property lines, marked in sharp, clear colors. Mine in green, theirs in blue. And running right between them, marked in bright, unmissable red, was the 30-foot-wide access easement. "This," I said, tapping the red line, "is the access easement to my farm. As you can see, it is a legally recorded right-of-way. It is not, and has never been, the exclusive property of the HOA." I then produced the second board. It was a blow-up of the county plat map, with the easement description highlighted in yellow. "For the past month," I continued, my voice steady, "your HOA president, Mrs. Miller, has been engaged in a campaign of harassment to illegally deny me access to my own property. She has posted fraudulent signage, filed false police reports, and attempted to levy fines against me for using my legal right-of-way. The room was dead silent. Every eye was on Brenda. Her face had gone from pale to a blotchy, furious red. "This is outrageous," she sputtered, finding her voice. "He's trespassing. He's a liar. Security, remove this man." A single, nervous-looking security guard in an ill-fitting blazer took a step forward, then stopped, unsure of what to do. I ignored her. I looked out at the faces of her neighbors. "I'm not here to ask for permission," I said. "I'm here to inform you. The harassment will stop. The gate is my property. The road is a shared easement. That is the law." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show the video. I didn't mention the water. This was just the opening salvo. I was just establishing a baseline of truth. I was showing her neighbors that she was a liar on a simple, verifiable matter. Brenda completely lost her composure. She stood up, knocking over her glass of water. "Get out," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "Get out of my meeting. You are not welcome here. None of you are to listen to him. He's trying to destroy our community." Her hysterical reaction was more damning than anything I could have said. Some of the residents looked at her, then at my calm demeanor and my clear, factual maps, and I could see the first seeds of doubt being planted in their minds. They had only ever seen her in control. Now they were seeing a tyrant losing her grip. As the guard finally escorted me out, I felt a grim sense of satisfaction. The first crack had appeared in her fortress. She had reacted exactly as I knew she would, with rage and denial. She had lost her credibility, but not her power. Not yet. The fallout from the HOA meeting was immediate. Brenda, feeling her authority challenged, went on the offensive. She launched a vicious, personal attack that was far more insidious than anything she had done before. She used the HOA's official email list and social media page to distribute a carefully worded, community safety alert. It didn't mention me by name, but it was clearly about me. It spoke of a hostile, non-resident individual who was attempting to destabilize our peaceful community. It hinted at erratic behavior and potential environmental hazards from the adjacent farm. The most venomous part was the accusation she had been building towards all along. She claimed to have reports that I was using unregulated, dangerous pesticides on my crops, and that chemical runoff was threatening to contaminate the pristine meadow's water supply. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. She was accusing me of poisoning the very water I supplied. It was a classic misdirection, a tactic to paint her victim as the aggressor. She was trying to turn her neighbors' deepest fear, the safety of their families, into a weapon against me. Then, she filed a frivolous lawsuit. A temporary restraining order to keep me from using my own easement, citing the fabricated claims of harassment and the bogus environmental threat. It was a move designed to bury me in legal fees and tie me up in court for months. She was no longer just digging her own grave, she was trying to pull me into it with her. I knew this was coming. I had anticipated her lashing out when cornered. But the sheer malice of her attack still took my breath away. She was willing to terrify an entire community with lies just to win a petty squabble over a gate. But as she escalated, a new and unexpected ally emerged. I got a call from an unknown number. The man on the other end was nervous, his voice barely a whisper. "Is this Sam?" he asked. "It is," I said cautiously. "My name is Arthur. Arthur Sims. I'm the treasurer for the Pristine Meadows HOA." He paused, taking a shaky breath. I need to talk to you. Not on the phone. Can we meet?" Arthur was the whistleblower. He was a small, meek man in his 60s, with glasses that seemed too big for his face and a perpetually worried expression. He was everything Brenda was not, quiet, unassuming, and deeply troubled. We met in a secluded corner of the county library. "I can't stand what she's doing," he began, wringing his hands. "The lies about you, the fear-mongering about the water. It's wrong. Why are you telling me this, Arthur?" I asked gently. "Brenda, she was married to my cousin. He passed away a few years ago. I've known her a long time. She's always been controlling. But this is different. This is unhinged." He looked around nervously, as if she might materialize from behind a bookshelf. "She's been cooking the books," he said, his voice dropping even lower. 4 years. Especially the water maintenance fund. We pay a fortune into it every quarter, but she's the only one with access to the account. The invoices she submits for maintenance work, they're from a company that doesn't exist. My blood ran cold. This was it. The final, undeniable proof. The company, Valley Water Solutions, is a shell, Arthur continued. She's been siphoning tens of thousands of dollars a year. I think she's in financial trouble. Her husband left her with a lot of debt. Can you prove it? I asked, my voice tight. He slid a manila envelope across the table. I've been making copies for the last year. Bank statements, fake invoices, withdrawal slips. It's all there. I was too scared to do anything with it. But then she started this campaign against you, trying to frame you for poisoning the water she's supposed to be maintaining. I couldn't live with myself if I stayed silent. I opened the envelope. It was a meticulously organized collection of financial documents that painted a damning picture of felony embezzlement. She wasn't just a bully. She was a common thief, funding her lavish lifestyle by robbing her own neighbors while letting the vital infrastructure they depended on fall into disrepair. Arthur, I said, looking him in the eye. You've done the right thing. You're a brave man. He just shook his head, looking relieved and terrified at the same time. Just stop her, he whispered. Please. Now I had all the pieces. The easement violation. The recorded threats and property damage. The slander and the frivolous lawsuit. And now, the smoking gun of financial fraud. It was time to stop playing defense. It was time to involve higher authorities. I didn't go back to the local sheriff. This was bigger than a town squabble. I made 2 appointments. The first was with the State Water Resource Board. The second was with the district attorney's office. To each meeting, I brought a binder. It was thick, organized, and cross-referenced. It contained the maps, the deeds, the water rights documents. It contained the high-definition video of Brenda's late-night, tool-wielding tirade. It contained printouts of her slanderous social media posts. And in a separate, sealed envelope, it contained the financial records provided by Arthur. I presented my case calmly, logically, like an engineer outlining a project. I didn't need to be emotional, the evidence spoke for itself. The reaction from the water board was one of controlled alarm. They were deeply concerned that a private water system serving over 100 homes was being maintained by a fraudulent company, and that the person in charge was actively trying to ruin the reputation of the senior water rights holder. An immediate, top-to-bottom inspection was ordered. The reaction from the DA's office was even more serious. The assistant district attorney I met with, a sharp woman named Chen, looked through Arthur's documents with a grim expression. This is not just mismanagement, she said, her voice steely. This is grand larceny. Wire fraud. Forgery. She looked at the video of Brenda's threats. And that's just the financial side. I had set the wheels of justice in motion. But I wanted more than just a quiet arrest. Brenda had built her entire identity on public perception and control. Her downfall needed to be just as public. She needed to be unmasked in front of the very people she had terrorized and stolen from. I suggested a plan to ADA Chen. A way to ensure Brenda would incriminate herself one last time, in a room full of witnesses. A final showdown. Chen smiled. I like it, she said. Let's give her all the rope she needs. Using my newfound, if reluctant, status as a community figure, I formally requested a special, emergency HOA meeting. The topic, I announced in a public letter to all residents, was to address the urgent and serious allegations of water contamination raised by President Miller. I framed it as giving her a platform to present her evidence against me. It was an irresistible piece of bait for a narcissist like Brenda. The chance to publicly humiliate me in front of the entire community she ruled. She would never be able to resist. She scheduled the meeting for the following Wednesday night at the clubhouse. She sent out an email blast urging every resident to attend to hear the truth and protect our community from outside threats. What she didn't know was who else would be in attendance. The night of the final showdown, the clubhouse was packed. It was standing room only. The air was thick with tension and anticipation. Brenda's core supporters sat in the front rows, looking smug and defiant. Others looked nervous, confused, caught in the middle. Arthur Sims sat in the back, looking pale but resolute. Unnoticed by most, 2 plainclothes investigators from the DA's office took seats near the exit. And a quiet, stern-looking woman from the State Water Board sat in the corner, a thick binder on her lap. Brenda stood at the dais, soaking in the attention. She was dressed in a severe-looking red power suit, her face a mask of righteous indignation. She thought this was her coronation, the moment she would finally crush the rebellion and solidify her power forever. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice ringing with false sincerity. "It has come to my attention that our community is under threat. A threat to our property values, our safety, and the very water our children drink." She launched into a grand, theatrical speech, full of lies and innuendo. She painted me as a monster, a negligent farmer dumping poison into the ground. She waved a sheaf of papers in the air, claiming they were expert reports, proving the contamination. I let her go on for a full 10 minutes. I let her dig her grave deeper and deeper, piling lie upon lie. I stood silently at the side of the room, my own binder in my hand, my expression unreadable. When she finally paused for dramatic effect, I stepped forward. "Mrs. Miller," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "You make some very serious accusations. Perhaps you'd be willing to answer a few questions." She sneered. "I don't answer to you." "Then perhaps you'll answer to the residents you're supposed to be serving," I said, turning to the crowd. "Let's start with something simple. The gate." I put the plat map back on the easel. "Mrs. Miller has repeatedly claimed this easement is HOA property. This is a lie." I then played the first video. The one of her screaming and attacking the lock. The audio was clear. Her threats to burn my farm, her vile comment about my late wife's garden. Gasps rippled through the room. Her supporters looked stunned. Her face went white with shock and rage. "That's doctored," she shrieked. "That's fake. He's a liar." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "Let's move on to the water. You claim I am poisoning your water supply. An interesting accusation, given one simple fact." I put up a second display board. It was a large, color-coded hydrological map of the valley. "This," I said, pointing with a laser pointer, "is the aquifer. This is my reservoir. And these," I circled the area of pristine meadows, "are your wells. Your entire community exists on water that comes from my property. I hold the senior water rights. If anyone is in control of your water, Mrs. Miller, it is me." The murmuring in the room grew louder. People were starting to connect the dots. Her obsession with me, her lies, it was all starting to make sense. "And that brings us to the most important point," I said, my voice dropping. "The maintenance of that water system. The fund you all pay into every month to keep your water safe." I looked directly at Brenda. Her eyes were wide with panic now. She knew where this was going. "You've been submitting invoices from a company called Valley Water Solutions. I have here a certified letter from the Secretary of State." I held it up. "It confirms that no such company has ever been registered to do business in this state. It does not exist." The room erupted. People started shouting questions. "What's he talking about, Brenda? Where did the money go?" "And I have here," I said, my voice rising above the din, "bank statements. Statements from the Valley Water Solutions account. An account that lists only one signatory." I paused, letting the weight of the moment hang in the air. "Brenda Miller." I projected the first bank statement onto the screen. It showed tens of thousands of dollars being transferred from the HOA fund, and then immediately being spent on credit card bills, car payments for a luxury SUV, and cash withdrawals at a casino 2 hours away. It was over. The house of cards had collapsed. Brenda completely, utterly melted down. It was a sight to behold. Her mask of civility shattered, revealing the raving, cornered animal beneath. "Lies," she screamed, her voice cracking. "All of it, lies. That money was mine. I earned it. Managing this place, dealing with scum like all of you. I deserved a bonus. It was my right." In her panic, she had just confessed to the entire room. That was the cue. The two investigators from the DA's office stood up and walked calmly to the front of the room. One of them held up a badge. Brenda Miller, the lead investigator said, his voice calm but firm. You are under arrest for grand larceny, embezzlement, and wire fraud. As they put the handcuffs on her, she writhed and shrieked like a banshee. Her eyes, wild and full of hate, locked onto mine. You'll pay for this, she screeched, her voice echoing in the stunned silence of the clubhouse. I'll destroy you. You hear me? I'll destroy you. It was the last, hollow threat of a queen being dragged from her stolen throne. No one was listening anymore. They were just staring at the woman who had robbed them, lied to them, and ruled them through fear, now exposed as nothing more than a pathetic, common criminal. The aftermath was like the quiet that follows a violent storm. The community of Pristine Meadows was in shock, but it was also liberated. The HOA was dissolved and reformed under a new, sensible charter with a board of directors made up of reasonable people who were genuinely interested in their community. Brenda's fate was swift and decisive. Faced with a mountain of irrefutable evidence and dozens of angry witnesses, she took a plea deal. She was convicted on multiple felony counts and sentenced to 7 years in state prison. She was forced to pay back every cent she had stolen, which meant liquidating all her assets. She lost the house, the car, the status, everything she had built her life around. She was left with nothing. The new HOA board approached me a month later. They were apologetic, respectful, and a little bit terrified. We sat at my kitchen table, drinking coffee like civilized neighbors. They offered to pay for a new gate, to formally recognize my easement in their bylaws, and to work out a fair and legal water-sharing agreement that respected my senior rights while guaranteeing their supply. I agreed. I never wanted to control their water, I just wanted to be left alone. We drafted an agreement that was fair to everyone. They paid a modest annual fee for the water rights, and that money went into a trust dedicated to maintaining the health of the valley's watershed. Poetic justice. Life on the farm returned to its quiet rhythm. The gate now stands open most days. The new neighbors sometimes stop by to chat, to buy fresh eggs, or to thank me. They see me not as a threat, but as the quiet guardian of the valley. They have taken to calling me the Waterman, a nickname I find amusing. Sometimes, when I'm tending to Clara's wildflower garden by the gate, I think about the whole ordeal. I never wanted a fight. I came here seeking peace, a refuge from a world that had taken too much from me. But I learned that you cannot have peace if you are not willing to defend it. Bullies, whether they're on a playground or in an HOA boardroom, only understand one thing: strength. Not aggression, but the quiet, immovable strength of a person who knows they are in the right and is willing to stand their ground. Brenda tried to take my peace, tried to fence me in, and in doing so, she lost everything. I just wanted to work my land and be left alone. In the end, I got exactly what I wanted. The sun sets over the valley, the crickets begin their nightly song, and the water in the reservoir, deep and clear, continues its ancient, silent journey beneath the ground. And my farm, my sanctuary, is finally, truly, at peace.